You're listening to the House Hacking Podcast, the blueprint for one of the best financial life hacks there is. House hacking. If you are looking to get ahead financially or learn about the easiest way to get started with real estate investing, then you are in the right place. Stay tuned and join a community of individuals from all walks of life that use house hacking to eliminate their housing costs and accelerating their path to financial independence. Your number one place for all things house hacking.
Folks, welcome back to the show today. Thank you so much for joining us. And man, I have to tell you, this episode that we're about to go into, it was just, I love every guest we have on the show, but I don't think I've laughed and had so much fun recording an episode in quite a while. Our guest today has just absolutely crushed it. 5 years ago, she started with her very first house hack. And over that 5-year period, she's done a total of 3 house hacks that she used to help leverage into broader real estate investing. And that allowed her to leave her job as a teacher and be a full-time real estate investor. And this show was just so much fun. And with that said, make sure to hit the subscribe and like button for us. That way, as you're following along, you'll always get an update on every single episode. So let's go ahead and get to the guest and let's bring on Deandra. Deandra, thank you so much for being on the show today. I mean, I think I started following you way back in January, February on Instagram. And then ever since then, I was already in the middle of season 1 and had season 2 planned out, but I was like, I got to get her on the show. You're awesome. I love your Instagram channel.
Thank you so much.
I'm getting carried away. I mean, how are you doing? Where are you calling in from? How's life right now in sort of quarantine world, COVID? What's up with you?
Absolutely. So I'm in Virginia right now. I think I'm actually having a little bit of FOMO as I watch all the teachers go back to school because this is the first year I won't be teaching. This is the first year I won't be a full-time public school teacher because I was able to leave because of my rental income. And I'm kind of feeling like, don't forget me. Can we still hang out? But other than that, pretty good. We've been home since March, so it's been a good adjustment to what life would be like. And I will say me and my husband are still happy. We're still married, things are still okay.
That's right. It's like,
yes, for sure. We're like, you know what? We made the right choice. Go us. Like, we did it.
Well, I mean, sort of bad, but also good for us as real estate investors. We had a 1-bedroom apartment. The tenants finished out their lease. They were grad students and they left at the end of May and we put it on the market beginning of June. Oh my goodness. I mean, we were literally overwhelmed. I had to turn off the Facebook Marketplace ad. And I think it was people they were dating and they're like, nope, this isn't going to work. Or they had roommates and they're like, hey, you were a cool roommate until we were locked down on quarantine.
That's right.
And now, sorry. We ain't
That's
living
so
together.
funny. I didn't even consider how many people would be looking because we made the wrong choice. We thought this was going to be good. You take the dog, I take the plants. Let us just go.
Oh man, it was crazy. I mean, for us as the investor side, it was amazing because we had we had to turn off Cozy because people were still applying and I just need the place. I need to apply. And we're not even seeing it yet. We had folks that were going to be coming back for school and they were like, I'll put down the deposit and I'll go start paying rent. And I'm not coming back till, campus, end of July, August. And we're just like, best situation to be in as a landlord. But yeah.
Where's
awesome.
that condo?
It's a 1-bedroom as part of a building we have here in New Orleans.
Oh, God. New Orleans. Dope.
Yeah. Our third house hack was this old corner store that we converted into 3 higher end apartments. And then there was an old barn building that we turned into a 1-car garage and sort of a studio. But yeah, that 1-bedroom came up and it flew off the shelves.
That's so crazy.
So for folks that maybe skipped ahead of the intro, sometimes they do that. So, let's give us this high level summary of your house hacking experience. In 2 minutes, just give us that, the house hack that you've done, the second one, a little bit of the third one, and how that got you to where you're at.
Absolutely. So I will say I'm a professional house hacker. This is what I did for years. And the reason I was a professional house hacker was because, how do I explain? When I graduated college, I had no money. So
it sounds like most people when they graduate college. Yeah.
I majored in chemistry, so very applied to real estate. And I could not get a job. And I had student loan debt. So I really didn't want to go to grad school yet until I knew for sure what I wanted. Chemistry was my love going into college, but I didn't want to go to medical school and take out another $250,000 debt. I didn't want to go to vet school. I just didn't know. So I took time to kind of figure it out, but I couldn't get a job because in a chemical field, you need to have higher than a bachelor's to be important.
Yeah.
So I worked as a bartender and a vet assistant and a lifeguard and a swim instructor and a driving teacher and a babysitter. Just literally whoever would pay me, I was like, I'm down.
Yeah.
And I woke up. Oh, you know what it was? It was for those, if you don't have student loan debt, when you graduate in May, your first payment is not due until November. So they give you 6 months for that first payment. I remember waking up almost like November-ish first and being like, I don't know what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Like I'm treading water here. I'm barely doing it. And now I have another $500 payment or $400 payment. Life's got to be better than this. And this is 6 months out. And I'm like, people do this for 60 years. That's too much. So I figured if I couldn't lower that expense, I could lower my housing expense, which meant I had to house hack because I definitely didn't have 20% for an investment property.
Yeah.
So that's what started that whole process.
And this was what, 22, 21, 23, somewhere in there?
This was when I woke up and realized I was 22, when I had that moment of realization and I didn't buy my first, and it took me 2 years to get myself together before I bought, I guess a year and a half before I bought that first place.
And what year was this roughly?
It was 2013 when I graduated and I bought my first property in 2015.
Okay. So market was just starting to come back and, house hacking, it was out there a little bit, but I mean, did you know what house hacking was at this point? Or did you just sort of come across this idea of like, oh, I could buy this place and then rent out the rooms?
I did not have the word house hacking, but I definitely had the idea of like, if you bought a duplex, you could rent out the other side, but I couldn't afford duplexes. So it's like, I'm cool with having a roommate. So if I bought, that was my standard for my realtor. They were like, what are you looking for? I'm like, anything. They're like, no. I was like, you don't understand. You understand? I grew up in Harlem. Neighborhoods are not an issue. Like I promise you, you can't scare me. So neighborhood's not an issue. If it's livable, like safe, and has at least 2 bedrooms. That was my own thing. I need 2 or more bedrooms. I'm good. So I didn't have the word house hacking, but I definitely understood if someone paid me, then I could pay my mortgage and be good.
Yeah. All right. So you spent 2 years getting yourself together. I mean, what did that look like? Was this, getting the job, fixing credit? I mean, what did it all sort of entail, getting ready to where you could actually do that house hacking?
Everything was terrible. Everything was awful. When I first went to the bank, the lady laughed at me, Andrew.
Oh my goodness.
I know. My poor, if I didn't have such high self-esteem, I would have been devastated.
She just pulled out the credit report and was like, "Hi, you want a house?" No.
Bruh, it wasn't just the credit report. It was also that I didn't have a salary job. So all these part-time jobs don't count. And I only had them for 6 months. Yep. I didn't have enough credit because I had taken out credit cards, but I had this enormous student loan debt, no salary. So it was my credit, it was my income, and I didn't have long enough history anywhere. So I didn't even have like a landlord who could help me reference. Like I didn't have anything. So what I have been doing up to that point, I have been applying for jobs. It's never like I stopped. Yeah. I luckily was able to get a job. It almost like I thought I wanted a house, and then a month and a half later, I got the job. I would have been interviewing, and I finally sealed the deal. So I graduated May 2013. Okay. In January 2014, so it took about 8 months, I got my first big girl job, and I was making $28,000 a year. So, rolling in it. So, I had that, but I also still had this credit card debt. I knew I couldn't do anything about my student loans. Like they were what they were, but I had about maybe $6,000 in credit card debt that I had used to kind of make ends meet. I didn't have the best credit, partly because of the credit card debt. So I worked 40 hours a week at the lab where I worked, but then I also worked nights and weekends at the pool. So I stayed as a lifeguard because I was making $10 to $15 an hour, and just like 9 to 5. And then I would get my car, drive to the pool, work 6 to 9, then get up and do it all over again. And that was because I had no savings either. I had completely wiped those out. So just about half went to the credit card debt and half went to my down payment. And when I was finally I need to get something, my lease is going to be over in 6 months. She said, you can qualify for $85,000. And I went to my realtor, slapped it down, here's pre-approval. I'm ready to go. And he's like, so there's nothing for sale, which is why it took longer, even so, because there was nothing on the market. But it took 1.5 years for me to pay off that credit card debt, put a little money aside, and just continue to pay for the 1 bedroom I was renting at the time.
Yeah. So then $85,000 pre-approval letter, you finally found a place. What type of property was it? How much did it cost?
Yes, it was a 2-bedroom townhouse. So it was part of a duplex. In this particular community, they had built a lot of duplexes, but they had zoned them as single family. So they had cut it down the middle.
Yep.
So I bought one of those duplexes. One of those townhomes. It was 2 bedrooms. It had a den in the basement that could have been converted to a 3rd bedroom, but it had no window. I could take that risk of being trapped in the fire, but I couldn't let my tenants take that risk of being trapped in the fire. So I just had one roommate, and it was listed for $85,000. Truly, there was nothing else. When we went to go see it, my realtor and I, the whole time, were like, what's wrong with it? There's gotta be something wrong, because nothing in this market is under 120 grand. But I guess it was for me. So I could be on this podcast with you, Andrew, 5 years
Awesome.
later.
Well, one thing you went over pretty quick, I just want to call out. So you mentioned the basement was a den and you could have lived in there, but you didn't want to risk the tenant. So what she's referring to, so for something to be an actual bedroom, you need to have 2 forms of egress. So if it's a daytime use space, it's not an issue because you would be awake and alert. But at night, if it's going to be a sleeping space, you have to have those 2 forms of egress. One would be a door, and then one would be a bedroom. And most building municipalities have on their building codes, there has to be a minimum square footage of that window as well. So that's something, if you're thinking about and you're looking at a place to add that 3rd bedroom or have that rental income suite, you need to make sure you have those 2 forms of egress if it is a basement. So just want to call it that really quick.
Oh, I wanted to add that this was even more difficult because the house was built into a hill. So you don't just need a window, you need a window that also has access up. So I would have had to dig down in like the side of the hill, put a window, and then also put like a ladder in it so someone could like literally get out in the case of emergency. And that price was not
affordable. Yeah.
Not at all.
All right. So $85,000. Was this an FHA loan? 3.5%?
No, it was conventional.
Oh, okay. And what'd you have to do for the down payment? 5%?
It was 3%.
Okay.
So my down payment and my closing costs were right about $4,000. Because the seller agreed to pay 3%, the maximum she could, in concessions. So I essentially only came out of pocket for my closing costs.
And that's a great way to lower your cost to get into a property, is have your realtor negotiate into the price that the seller will pay concessions.
Yep.
And what was your total payment? Taxes, insurance?
Everything was $525.
And then because it was a duplex but split up, did you have like a association fee, a condo fee, or anything like that? You only had to really pay for the outside of yours. There wasn't like joint responsibility. Awesome. So, I mean, that's pretty cheap.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
So what were you renting this other room for?
$600.
Okay. So just clarify that for me again. What was your mortgage all in?
My mortgage all in was $525.
And what were you getting for rent?
$600.
Sounds like you're living for free right there.
That's right. Not only, and this is like, I have like phases of house hacking. This was phase 4. When not only was my mortgage covered, all my utilities were. So that extra $75 went to super high speed internet. It went to water, and it went to electricity. Because I only had to pay half of that. He paid the other half. Yep. So it was truly, I might even profit, Andrew. I might have even profited like $10 a month.
Yeah.
You know. Like, yeah.
That's the cheap beer night when you're out.
That's right.
That's the, couple of Starbucks coffee once a month or something.
On me, guys, I got it like that now.
Awesome. All right. So how'd you find the tenants? And then did you do background and screening on them? Tell us how that worked.
When I say it out loud, if I was one of my one-on-one clients saying what I'm about to say to you, I'd say shame on you. That is terrible.
I mean, that's most of us in our early investing career, right? If like the experienced us looks back and like, oh my God, I can't believe you did that.
I can't believe I wasn't sued. Yeah, I can't believe I didn't get like someone to come rob me. No, I lucked out. My boyfriend, my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, his best friend was looking for somewhere to live, and he decided to live with me.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I didn't do a background check. I didn't do any of those things. I just lived with my boyfriend's best friend at that point.
Leases or just handshake?
It was a lease. We did have a lease.
Okay, so you did have a lease.
Yeah, so I did do some things right. I did have a lease. I did collect a security deposit. But I did not do a background check. I did not check employment. I did not look for prior evictions. It just was like,
and
this will be fun.
How'd you settle on the $600 price? Was that just sort of, hey, if I were to go rent a room or rent a 1-bedroom, that's what it would cost, and you just sort of threw it out there? And
it was what he had been paying before when he lived with my husband. So I was like, he doesn't have to change anything, and he gets a bigger room, a nicer house. So like, he should be okay with it. And he totally was.
Awesome. All right. So how long did you end up living in that property for?
About 18 months.
Okay. So 18 months. And then did you sell it? Did you stay in it? What'd you do?
No, I haven't sold any of my house hacks. My husband and I got engaged. So I guess boyfriend then got engaged, and he was all in about this house hacking thing, as he saw, because we lived separately, and he was paying rent, and all that money is just like, right, just gone. So
and here he sees his best friend living with you, and you're just like rolling in it. Give me
rolling in it. That $10 Starbucks really reeled him in. He was like, I can appreciate it. Yeah. So what was so crazy is that this whole time I have been strategizing to get the next door property. Oh. The owners, so I had one half of the duplex. The owners of the other half were out of state. And, I might have upped some of my anxieties about the people they would put in that property, just kind of just keeping up with them of like, hey, what's going on? They're doing this. Eventually they just got sick of being landlords. And I have been working that lead for 18 months trying to get that other property. And they finally were ready to sell. So my husband and I talked about it, and we decided to buy that property next door.
Awesome.
Yes. So then we owned the full duplex.
So how'd you finance that property? Because one of the challenges that a lot of folks deal with is most underwriters don't want you to move from one property, turn it into a rental, into a new property if they don't feel like it's an improvement. So what type of financing did you do? Did you do it both in you and your husband's name? I mean, just talk us through that process of how you worked through that.
Absolutely. So we did it in his name, which helped enormously because he didn't have anything under his name. Yep. But I will say I was qualified under my name. And the reason it worked was because the owners who were out of state were contractors. So they had did crazy improvements to their side. And part of that was mine was a 2-bedroom with a den. They actually spent that money to get that third room into be a bedroom.
So this is where an underwriter would justify it. Like, it's a better quality place. It's a 3-bedroom. So basically in their eyes, you're upgrading your living like most Americans do, but you're just like, this is perfect for us.
Yes. So we went from a 2-bedroom. I went from a 2-bedroom, 1-bath to a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, because they even put in another full bathroom. We were also built into a hill. So at the back, a hill that dropped off pretty steeply. At the back of mine, it just dropped off. So I just put a fence, and it was a very tiny little plot, even though I owned a lot. Yeah. They put a retaining wall, put a deck, fenced everything in. Like, they spent a lot of money and time really making their property a lot nicer than mine. So it, like you said, to an underwriter, it totally made sense that we would want to upgrade.
All right. And so what'd you buy it at? What was the final sales price on it? And then what'd you guys have to do for down payment on the property?
Yes. So we bought it for $140, which was a punch to my stomach because I had bought the next door property a year prior for $85,000. But they had done a lot, so I guess out of respect. But we bought it for $140. We had to put 5% down, and the mortgage payment at that point was about $830.
Not bad at all.
No.
So now did you do the other place rent by the room, or did you do a flat lease for the whole place?
I just did a flat lease.
And what'd you end up getting for a rent on it?
So the base was $200, but remember how we said we look back at our lives and we're saying, well, why did you do what you did? Yeah. We found tenants. No, sorry, the base was $1,250. Okay. We found tenants who had pets, and I knew to charge a pet fee. But they had 4 cats and 2 dogs.
Ooh, yeah.
So What it wound up being, the rent wound up being $1,400 because they
Okay.
paid $25 per pet.
Yeah. So not bad. I mean, 830, 1,400 a month. Are you still managing
Oh, I'm
them
sorry. No, no,
yourself?
no. That 1,400 was for the 525 property. That was for like my original house
Oh
hacking.
man. So you actually have a good spread in here. You're like $900. So this is pretty awesome
Yeah.
then.
No, it was great.
And are you still managing that at this point? You're still managing that yourself, or did you outsource it to a property manager?
No, we're still managing it. We're still in the same area. I'm actually under renovation with it right now, trying to up so we can get a higher rent, putting new
Very cool.
floors and paint and all that stuff. So so that same tenant had been there for the last 3 years. So you
Cool.
can imagine what the 4 cats and the 2 dogs did to the property.
Yeah. So did they lose their deposit, or
Oh,
was it
yes.
sort of? Yeah, they did.
Oh,
Okay.
yes. That's gone.
Do you think you would have renovated and done updates to it if the tenants with all their pets didn't do massive wear and tear on it?
Yeah, I would have, because the person who did the renovation the first time was me, with the help of YouTube. And when I see like what my flooring looks like to what like I'm having a friend help me put the floor. When I see a professional do it, I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
that was so bad.
It was good enough at the time, but now where you're like, okay, I'm further along. I should put some real money into it and do it
That's
right.
right.
Okay.
I'm right. I'm on Instagram now. People are
Yeah.
gonna, see what these floors look like. Gotta be better.
Awesome. All right. So flat lease, you're in there, you're in the new place. You got 3 bedrooms. Is it just you and your husband? Do you rent out that 3rd bedroom? What are you guys doing in this new place?
We did. We rented out one of the bedrooms because we were getting married. So we bought the house in January with the full intention. Our wedding was set for December that year, and we didn't want to pay for a wedding. So we rented out the room so that I think we rented it for $700 a month. That way, all that money just went straight to our wedding.
Yeah. So technically didn't send you to your wedding. It's like 830 a month is your mortgage and you're bringing in 700. So that just freed up a lot of your other income to put towards it. One thing I want to ask you about here is how'd that actually work out? I mean, you're newlyweds, you're engaged, and some folks are sort of like, I can only have roommates when I'm young and I'm single or I'm just dating someone. Like I wouldn't do that when I was a couple or when I'm married. But did that put challenges on the relationship at all? Or was that sort of like you're still young enough in a stage of life where having someone living with you because you already had someone with you and he had a roommate, it wasn't really an issue?
That is a great question that no one has really like ever dived into. I thank you for like shining a light on that. Number one, I think why it worked is because we were both of the mindset that money is the most important right now. Like we both had student loan debt and we did not want to go into debt for a wedding. We wanted the wedding of our dreams, but we did not want to look up and be like, we put $20,000 for a one-day wedding. And everyone said, your wedding is great, but I promise you're not going to remember most of it.
Yep.
And they are absolutely right. Like it was great. I remember the emotions, but I don't really remember what we ate or what the music was and what the speeches were. And if I would have spent triple what I paid, I would have been devastated, especially if it was on credit. So number one, we were both in agreement, like money is number one right now. So we don't want to take second jobs. So that means we're going to have a roommate. The second thing I think that helped was that the house was 2 levels. It was a 2-level townhouse. So downstairs in the basement was like the living room and that bedroom, bathroom scenario. And upstairs was the other bedrooms. So our roommate and us, did not really share space. We hung out downstairs. He had the 2 upstairs bedrooms. So we allowed him like to convert that second bedroom almost like to his like living room space.
Ah, very
That
cool.
way we never really interacted with each other.
So you actually gave him the second bedroom and now he had a living space.
Yes, because we knew we wanted money, but we also didn't want to come downstairs and see him like chilling, watching TV. Like that was
sitting in his underoos, eating some cereal, watching
What's up, guys?
cartoons. Or like,
we knew we for sure didn't want that. So by giving him those 2 upstairs bedrooms, he could have his room that he slept in. He could have his little social space or music room. He was a musician, little music room. He had his bathroom, so it was all like a little wing.
Yep.
We did share the kitchen, but he didn't cook very much because he was just a single dude kind of living.
Yeah.
So it worked out.
I mean, I think the fact that you had that aligned financial goal of like, it's not something we're going to do long-term. It's like,
Yep.
we're going to do this for a while and we know we have this goal out there. We want to have a wedding and not have debt. So this is going to allow us to do that. And then that paired with that sort of separate space made it seem to work really well. So,
Yes.
I mean, my next question is, you got married. Did you kick him out or did you guys
Yes.
move on to another place?
No, we definitely asked him to leave. We got married in December. When we came back in January, we gave him his 30-day. He was month to month. And he knew it was coming. Like he for sure knew that this wasn't a long-term scenario. So he moved out. And that's when, at that point, what was really great is that it had been a calendar year, like a year had passed. So I had been in the new house. So I had all this rental income on my taxes.
Yep.
So when it was time for me to go apply for my next house hack to the bank, it looked like I just had that one that had been making money for 2 years, or I guess maybe 13 months. So now it looked really good for me moving forward.
Yep. Awesome. So now how long did you end up staying in that second property before you went on to your third house hack?
We bought that house in January 2017. Then we weren't married. So January 2017, we bought the upgraded townhouse together.
Yep.
And I immediately actually started looking for another property because I had moved out already. So I was like, okay, I have my income coming in. The bank said I don't need to have it for years and years. And we bought a duplex August 2017. So we bought 3 units the year before we got married.
And then, so you left that property, that other side of the townhouse, and then you guys went into the duplex together?
I went into the duplex. Okay. So that way we weren't breaking any rules, right? We spent the night a lot at each other's house, but our residences were separate. So with that duplex, one side, it was 3 bedrooms, 1.5 baths, much nicer area. One side was completely rented. The other side was not. That's where I lived. I started it because I didn't want to get roommates while I was bouncing back and forth. So that became my Airbnb. So on nights I was there, nights we stayed there, no Airbnb guests, mostly for weekends and such though, especially because I live in a college town. We were getting hurt with sports. I went to his house and I Airbnb'd for the weekend.
And did you manage the Airbnb yourself or did you outsource any of it? You did the listing. Did you do cleaning as well?
I did.
So this is just an awesome strategy. So one thing you had mentioned on was you said not to break any rules. So I just want to call that out to folks. When you use some of these primary residence loans, especially the like FHA, the conventional low money down loans, you're required to occupy the property within a 60 to 90 day period, depending on the loan. And then you have to live in it for a 12-month period as your primary residence. There's always extenuating circumstances, but what you don't want to do is essentially lie on the application and commit mortgage fraud and then say you're going to move in, never move in, or move in for a month and then move out when you truly had no intention to live there long term. And what she was doing is perfectly okay. But, if you're going to be building any sort of real estate business, or even you're just going to use a house hack to get ahead financially, do it the right way and don't take shortcuts because, if you're going to build this financial house, don't build it on a shaky foundation that can cause it. So I just wanted to call that out because what you said was absolutely beautiful. And sometimes those for folks that are listening that don't get that. So think through that stuff in your strategy. So, all right. So you've got the one half of the townhouse, you got the second half of the townhouse, you got the duplex, that duplex, what'd you buy it for? What was your all-in payment? And then what were you getting rent for the other side?
Yeah, so that duplex was so interesting. It was for $275,000.
So you're stepping up. You went 85, 140s. Now you're up at 275.
Yes. And I used the FHA loan. So I put 3.5% down. That seller also gave me the max concessions, which I think was 3%, maybe 4% at the time. So essentially all I paid was my closing costs, which out of pocket was about $12,000. The beauty though, is because the area had appreciated so much so quickly that I took out a HELOC when my husband and I bought that second property on my first property. So I had about a $50,000 HELOC to use. And that's what I used to pay that $12,000 out of pocket for the duplex.
Nice. And a $12,000 on a HELOC is probably dirt cheap. I mean, your payment was chump change, probably.
$50, yeah.
$50.
And also remember, because the spread was so huge on the first property, that eating $50 didn't bother me.
Yeah.
Because I was getting $900 a month or $800 a month in cash flow.
All right. And then, so the duplex, how many beds and baths was on each side? Was it mirrored each side, or was one side better than the other?
Nope, it was mirrored. 3 bedrooms, 1.5 baths on each side. Bedrooms in the full bath upstairs, kitchen, living, and half bath downstairs. Had a beautiful backyard, 2 off-street parking spaces. It's a really, really solidly built property.
And what were you renting the other side for?
Now, this was tricky for me because this property did not come empty. Everything else at this point had come empty. This property, one side was occupied, or 2 sides were occupied. They actually asked one of the tenants to leave so I could move in. The other side worked for the seller. So it was getting a discounted rent, and that was not disclosed in all the work we did. So when we got a lease, the lease that person was paying $1,000, I believe, but he was really paying $750. Because he had agreed to that. So what happened was, luckily, the seller agreed to pay that difference in rent for the rest of that person's lease. So I was getting $1,000 for one side.
So did you miss this when you're doing due diligence, or were you still earlier in your career where, they said it was $1,000 and they just had a handshake lease, so there wasn't a lease for you to verify?
No, so it definitely was early. So there was a lease. The lease said $1,000. They had a handshake discount agreement. And I didn't know then that I need to get each tenant to verify all aspects of the lease. So now when I buy a property, I will not buy one unless I've spoken to each tenant of like, this is the lease. This is what they say your rent is. This is what they say your security deposit is. I need you to sign this document that verifies what you're saying to me, because I don't want to have that issue again.
Exactly. And I actually do that as well. I'll put my cheat sheet in the show notes for folks. That way, if you want that, it's just a little form that I have the tenant sign and the seller sign. Basically says the same thing. When did you move in? How much of a deposit did you put down? What is your rent? When was the last time you paid rent? Do you have pets? Basically all that basic stuff. So that way, if you have the lease, this should clarify anything. And then I also add a little extra stuff on there. What are problems with the property? And sometimes the tenants will be really pissed off at the old landlord and they will dish about everything on there. And that helps us with
I
negotiating.
love a gossip. Love a good gossip. Tell me more. What else did he not do? Really?
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Wow.
Such a horrible landlord. I won't do that. Yeah.
I
have had that same conversation with prospective tenants. All right. So they moved the one tenant out. The other tenant was $700. What was your payment on this property when you financed it? $1,800. Okay. So you were thinking, okay, if it was at $1,000, that's covering more than half of it. And then, we've got a 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath.
Yes.
So what could you get for Airbnb on the other side?
On the best months, I think the best months were between $2,500 and $3,000.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. No, it was great.
And are you still doing Airbnb for that other side, or did you convert it over to a long-term property?
Converted over to long-term.
And that tenant that was there at 700, that was supposed to be at 1,000, how long did they stay?
They stayed to the end of their lease. They actually left a little earlier. They were unfortunately just not pleased with me as a landlord. I think they just really resented. They were significantly older than I was. And I think they really resented me, really. So from the beginning, that's when I first learned what a bounce check was because they submitted a check and it deposits, right? But you don't know until like 3-4 days later that it's bounced. And I didn't even think to check because you just deposit checks and you go about your business. They're the exact reason I don't accept personal checks anymore because I didn't know until so late. And luckily I had enough in there to cover the mortgage and such, but they just were not pleasant. And so by the end of their lease, and even with them not being pleasant, I didn't want to kick a family out.
Yeah.
But they were also paying so low rent, right? I currently get $1,400 from that place and they wanted to continue paying that $7,000 and it just wasn't feasible. Yeah. So they left and now both sides went for $1,400.
And both sides are long-term?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, you're $2,800 and you're making some good cash flow on this property.
Yeah.
All right. So How long did you end up staying there before you moved on to what's now your primary residence for you and your husband?
Yeah, so we bought that July of 2017, and we moved to this property that we're in right now in October of 2018. My husband was finally like, I'm done with roommates, done with, right? Because I was like, oh man, there's a quad. If we could just, because he didn't have an FHA in his name yet.
So you're like,
I was like,
we can do
if
an
you could
FHA
just,
in your
then
name.
we could go to the, and he's like, look,
I'm done. Yeah.
yeah, I get it. I just like, I get it. I just please would like to have a house that is ours. So.
But clearly, like, I mentioned this on just a previous episode, but I did this article and I'll put it in the show notes for folks. I titled it The House Hacking Leapfrog Strategy. It's basically exactly what you did is you go from one house hack to the next, and it sets you up to now have your primary residence and it's all covered via your cash flow from your other properties. You can do it twice, you can do it 5 times, whatever fits your style. But I mean, these 3 properties set you up. Now you own, so you got those, you have your primary residence, you have a studio apartment, and then you also own a little bit bigger of a unit. You want to just tell us about that one?
Yeah, so I decided to scale because the duplex was doing super well. So we bought a 10-unit apartment building that used to be a motel. So again, I love simple construction. I want boxes, I want squares, I want simple shapes. And it cost us about $160,000. So 20% of that out of pocket. So we came out of pocket with closing costs and everything, I think about 35 grand. And that brings us about $2,000 a month.
And did that place, was it already converted into like studio, 1-bedroom apartments? So you didn't have to do that conversion?
Yes, it was already converted. They're all studios and it has a little office, which I can store my supplies and go to work. So it's really, really nice.
Awesome. So in this 5-year period, you basically went from hustling, fixing credit, multiple jobs, to transitioning to a teacher full-time, to now you're no longer a teacher and you have enough passive income from your real estate to let you have a nice, comfortable lifestyle.
Absolutely.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. It's really, really nice to have that, not only passive income to cover bills, but also the time and the stress is gone of just like what's coming next. And we're still building, we're still growing. We only have 16 units. So there's a lot more to go, but
you're moving along.
You're surprised at like, I guess I was surprised like the peace. Like people talk about like being financially free and people talk about, I think people talk a lot about like what you can do and what you can buy and where you can go. But in reality, I think for me, the internal peace of 5 years ago, I didn't know how I was going to pay my loans. Like I didn't know how I was going to make ends meet. And I didn't want to burden my parents with what I felt were my choices. Yeah. Saying I can give my parents money if I wanted to.
So deep personal question here. Mm-hmm. How does that affect your relationship? I mean, from a romantic side, I mean, one of the biggest reasons people get divorced and have fights is over finances. And I mean, how has that impacted your life as a couple?
It has made us better because we can now love each other and make decisions and money is not an issue. My husband is going back to school this year because he wanted to go back to get his PhD. That was something that was very, very important to him. And 5 years ago, or when we first started dating, financially, we couldn't take that hit. We couldn't take on more debt. We couldn't take on a lower income. We just didn't have it. And now we can look, he can go. Like, we're good. We're fine.
It's a pretty awesome place to be in. I had built up my real estate portfolio quite a bit, and real estate was always my thing. And then when my wife and I started getting serious, we knew we were going to get engaged. I convinced her to do a house hack. And I said, look, this is going to set us up as a couple, our money. She had her money, I had my money. And then there was our money as a couple. And we did that house hack. And then we moved into another house hack. And we haven't had a sacrifice as far as quality. We're in great locations in New Orleans, beautiful place. But it has essentially made it so we have zero fights about money. It's because when you have no housing costs and you know that you have this baseline security and finances aren't an issue in a relationship, it just makes the relationship so much easier. And that's so cool that you guys are having that same effect as well.
Yeah. And I mean, and that's talking about cash flow. We haven't really talked about equity because we've also had conversations of like feeling good about if we had a surprise pregnancy, if someone got sick, if there was a massive expense we had that was tens of thousands of dollars, we could just sell a property. Like there's no like extra straight, just like, just sell one.
Yeah.
Yeah, your cash flow goes down, but each of these properties has at least $50,000 in equity in it. So we're going to get we pay taxes and whatnot, but we're going to get something out of it.
Yeah.
So it's not just that the cash flow is there. It's also that equity of like, if we needed to, we could get out of it. They're in good places. They're in great hot markets, but that would cover that too. So things can happen and like, we're not afraid. I think that's just, like I said, that piece, you're just not afraid of life because it's there.
Yeah. I think we need to come up with a hashtag. What's house hacking for a better marriage? That's a little long, but we'll have to play around with some ideas. So
yeah, that's right.
yeah. So when we share this out on Instagram, we'll come up with a cool hashtag.
I'll work on it. I'll write it down in my notes.
Awesome. All right. So one last quick question for you is, you obviously collected cash and some checks, and checks had bounced. What do you do now for managing your 6 units? Do you use a Cozy, a Vail, a Buildium? Do you still collect checks?
Yes. Oh, great question. So a lot of my properties are in low income neighborhoods, right? Mm-hmm. Because they were the cheaper ones. They have built up since then, but a lot of my tenants also, especially in my building, the big building, are over the age of 65. So they're not learning whatever it is I'm asking them to do. Yep. So I collect money orders. They mail them in special envelopes. They go to my PO box and I just deposit those. My tenants, like my college age tenants, they'll send it, do the ACH transfer, just like straight into the account, or deposit it right into the account. So, and then I have a number of Section 8 tenants, and Section 8 will write checks. Yep. So I'll take a check from Section 8.
Yes.
That's the person I'll take. I think they're good for it. That's the only person I'll take a check from. Everyone else has to send in a money order or do a bank transfer.
Awesome. And then how do you manage everything? Excel, QuickBooks, FreshBooks? How do you track all your income and expenses?
Have an Excel sheet.
Awesome.
I don't have too many expenses and they're from the same people. And it helps that we don't really touch that money very much. Because I also forgot, or I guess I could add that too, because we were both full-time teachers the whole time. Every time we moved from a house hack, we never touched the money. We still lived off of our actual salary.
Awesome.
So that money had just for the past 5 years been piling up and piling up. Yeah. So we don't we don't withdraw from it very often. And even now, like I really don't touch that money. It is enough to cover my expenses. But then I started like Instagram, and I started other businesses, landscaping and Airbnbs and other things that kind of pay for my income or pay for my salary.
Yeah.
So it's easy to keep it on Excel because I'm the only one who has access to the money, and my husband, I'm not worried anybody's stealing, and write out the expenses.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been so awesome talking with you. I'm glad we were finally able to connect.
Yes.
Before we let you go, we like to ask all of our guests a set of final 6 questions. Are you ready for them?
I am.
All right. Number 1, what is your favorite personal finance resource? So blog, book, podcast.
There is this book that I read called Atomic Habits, which is not directly about personal finance, but the way he gets in your soul about how you are the cause of so many of your issues because of your habits really just completely changed my mind about money. Of really thinking to myself, what am I doing that's easy? What am I doing that's just like leaking money? And changing those things made me a lot better.
I got that book as soon as it came out. It's awesome. I'll put a link in the show notes for folks. Definitely go buy that book. It's pretty amazing. All right. Question number 2, what's your favorite real estate related resource? So blog, book, or podcast? There
is a podcast called The Black Real Estate Dialogue. Short name is Bread. And the reason I adore that podcast is because Sam is the creator. He is focused on telling young Black stories to young Black people, because a lot of people think that real estate is a much older game and sometimes a much wider game than it actually is. And just want to give those examples so people feel motivated. Like, I look like you, like we did it too at 23. Don't feel like you have to be 60 to get started. So I really love that he's sharing. And it's all, I mean, from flippers to wholesalers to interior designers, just anyone involved with real estate, he puts on his blog or his podcast.
Awesome. So we'll definitely link to that in the show notes as well. Really, really cool. All right. So question number 3, what's been your favorite travel destination so far?
Yeah. 2 years ago, my high school friends and I took a trip to Edinburgh in Scotland.
So how'd you end up in Scotland?
Yeah. Purely because one of our friends had a conference. And she's like, do you guys want to come? We're like, okay. So we went to Scotland and it was crazy. None of us had ever been to anywhere like that. It was cold, but it was amazing. It was just, it's my favorite because it was just so different. I like to go hot. I want to go to Jamaica. I want to go to Panama. So to go somewhere like cool and stony was just awesome.
Awesome. Yeah. Very cool. Yeah. I was about to say Scotland isn't usually the place that comes up on people's list very awesome, but it's a pretty amazing country.
It really is.
All right. So question number 4, what is next on your travel vacation list? Are you going to try to go do anything while COVID is slowly lingering, or are you sort of holding off, and what's sort of next maybe after COVID?
My husband, so I will say last year was Cuba, and then that very quickly got put aside because we can't go there anymore. But it would be Jamaica is next on our list. And the reason is both of our parents are Jamaican.
Oh, really?
And we haven't been as adults.
Oh.
Right. So we went a lot as kids, but we haven't gone as like, we have money to actually do things. Yeah. So that's next on our list.
So I took my wife for our anniversary last year to Jamaica. So I didn't tell her where we were going. I just said, look, have your bags packed. You might or might not need a passport. And here's the temperature. And so literally on the way to the airport, she didn't know where we were going until we checked in, and we got to fly first class, go through Miami, and then to be in Jamaica for a week. So it was a pretty awesome trip and amazing country.
Yes. And we're very excited to just, for COVID to be over. Right. Yeah. But very excited to go to see where our parents grew up and to get that connection more as an adult now that you know what they have become.
Yeah.
So you don't appreciate as much as kids.
Yeah. And then, so question number 5, what is the biggest bucket list item you have not accomplished yet?
Yes. I want to get dropped into a country where English is not the primary language. And I want to have to make it for a month.
Ooh.
So yes, I took Spanish for years. I want to just be dropped in Spain and be like, nope, you don't get to come home until you figure this out. Or dropped in China or dropped in Germany, just somewhere where
Sounds like you need to sign up for a game show. I feel like there's got to be a show that will do this, right? They'll be like, cool, we'll just throw you in some country and come back and check on you in a month. Yeah.
Yep.
Very cool.
It's not like they're dropping you in the jungle. No, you have all access. It's just in a different language. So figure it out.
The immersion is the way you learn so quick. So yeah. All right. So 6th and final question. What is your favorite life hack?
My favorite life hack is to budget daily. I budget every day, partly because I still have those cheap instincts I did when I was 23 and struggling, but also because the habit of seeing all the effort I put into making money to then watch it go away for nonsense is upsetting. And if I go 2 weeks, let's say we go on vacation or I just get super busy. If I have 2 weeks when I don't budget, I can see it. I can see it not only in my spending, I can see it in my weight because I'm picking up McDonald's every day and French fries. I can see it in my sanity because I'm picking up Starbucks. So I'm hyped. I'm either on a sugar rush or I'm crashing, right? It's either one of those two things. I can see it in my relationship because I'm bringing knickknacks home. It's like, do we need another one of these pillows? Who many pillows do you use? I didn't realize I had already bought 6. I can see it in my life when my money is not right. So by budgeting every day, it's kept me good at church. It's kept me good in my household. It's kept me good in my marriage. It's been wonderful.
Nice little daily check-in to keep you aligned and stuff. That's awesome. All right, Deandra, thank you so much for being on the show.
You're so welcome.
Give us a shout out. What's your Instagram handle, Facebook handle, where folks can find you?
I'm at at Deandra McDonald on all things social, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I tried to make a TikTok, but I was just so overwhelmed. I just couldn't. I
I'm
opened the
right
app
there
and it
with
was,
you. Like I got Facebook and Instagram down. I've been over the past 2 months starting on Pinterest, but now this whole TikTok thing, I was like, all right, I know I need to do it, and now it might get banned. So I'm like, okay, I can put it off for another.
that's right. I was like, oh, good thing I didn't get involved. But yes, on all things social, I'm at Deandra McDonald. I want to give a shout out to my husband, Sean McDonald, who will get to watch this or listen to this when it comes out. Yeah.
Thank you again for being on the show. This was an absolute blast. We'll put a link to
you.
all your social media handles in the show notes and everything. Again, thank you so much for sharing your story.
You're so welcome. Thank you for having me on.